So we can go to Jones Brothers. I'm waiting for the notice for other meetings.
Which is always this one now.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay, so once everyone from
Did you deliberately drop it?
With one side, it's just like
Because it was not the same. Not that I wanted to do the same. I thought what I have is too aggressive.
Yeah, if anything, I want to move the curve.
Yeah, everything pulled, everything.
I was
Did you go watch it?
Alright, who's the second person? Because you probably had this girl.
Wasn't me. Like state college on the edge.
What?
Yeah.
So yes, you're stronger. On the other side.
You have 5 people watching?
Five people, wow.
5 people watching? Well, one of them's right here. Yeah.
It's someone else. I can't.
There's a lot of time.
Well, I don't have it open.
I'm just
Handy.
No, it's the way that I did it. Other people.
Just smile and wait, boy. Smile and wait.
Don't worry, Mom.
Yeah,
That's just personal. I
I needed this.
just like those ones better.
You just want first message.
I
know. I scare Mom.
Oh, that's not what I'm talking about.
I know.
All right, gentlemen, 7:02.
Yes, we're waiting for the forecast challenge to come down. There's like a bunch of people.
Oh, they still going?
No,
Yeah.
When do they finish?
They finish at 7. They might be running a little bit late.
I don't want to.
I think it remains.
Okay, I'll start.
I think you're through.
Yeah, because your efforts there.
Okay, make sure I'm not.
Going.
Does say freeze on this. Yeah.
Okay.
What is this?
Can we turn the light on? Can you guys see that or not?
Not really.
Yeah, I think we should.
There we go.
What was that?
Yeah. Party and Walker.
The opposite of what you're doing. Turn on the backlight.
Well, there's no such thing as backwards.
So why not?
There you go.
No.
That's good. That's good.
That's cool.
Okay. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for all coming out to discuss the storm. As many of you know, there have been a lot of interesting trends with the models today, a lot of disagreement, and I will try to delve into that. I kind of want to make this more of like a discussion-like setting, so I'll be presenting my ideas, and if anyone has anything else to add or any other points to make, I would be more than happy to hear, because this is an extremely challenging forecast. And we need as many ideas as possible if we want to nail this storm. So without further ado, here is the current HPC analysis right here. You can see this is our storm right here, just about to crash on shore, the west coast. And with these 0Z runs tonight, the shortwave that is associated with this storm, the energy associated with it, will be fully onshore and better sampled. And therefore, we could expect some changes with that to occur. Going to the 48-hour forecast, you can see there's our storm right there. A lot of convection down south. This is a subtropical jet-laden system. Has a lot of convection down south. That has been throwing some of the models off, actually, as the models like to develop the center of low pressure right over the best convection. And so now going to the SPC observations, we can see here's our shortwave right here. This little dip is our shortwave. It has actually, there was at one point earlier today a severe thunderstorm warning for a snow shower. So that is the kind of storm that we are dealing with, a kind of interesting, very kind of moisture-laden system. You can see right here, it's very windy aloft. This is actually at 500 millibars. And these black lines here are 500 millibar heights. Here is the WPC 48-hour precipitation. You can see it is further south of us. If I were the WPC right now, I'd probably trim it down a little more for here as of now. But so this is going to be primarily, I think, the best amounts I think will probably be east of here. But how far northwest the precipitation can get is an interesting question, and a question that still has not been resolved. And so without further ado, here are some forecast models that I found. This is the 12Z GFS. And so this particular model run, if we go to precipitation, actually had a lot of precipitation over the State College area. And let's take a look at any nuances that might have caused that in the flow. So now, it's kind of hard to see, but notice that we have a closed 500 millibar height right here. This 534 is a closed 500 millibar height right over Virginia. And so that allowed for the precipitation to come further north. Notice how far north it got into Massachusetts. This is the newest 18Z run. And notice, yes, this is 18Z. The 18Z run was noticeably, you can even see it for State College right here, noticeably less precipitation than 12Z. And that, if we go to 500, you can see that if we look at where that 500 millibar low is, it actually takes a bit of a, notice right here, it's very bit of a nuance, but we're very close to a big solution here. It's just these nuances in the flow that are going to determine whether we get significant amounts or not. And this is one such nuance. Notice right here, your low is right here, and then it shifted east. With 12Z, it actually shifted from there to further northeast. And that, as a result, resulted in more of a north solution. And now, what's also interesting is that in looping all of these model runs, what I determined is that, a trend that I've been noticing over the last several model runs has been that this ridge in the west has become progressively more amplified. And what that means is that it's just more of a hilly kind of depiction compared to earlier runs. And usually this is actually a good sign if you want to see a further north storm, but not necessarily in this case, because if you see a more amplified ridge, what that in turn does is this forces this shortwave further south. And as a result of it being forced further south, you'll get a 500 millibar low that will close off sooner. And if I can find the European here, right here. So here's the European. Notice this 500 millibar low. Remember where it was in the GFS? Look where it is in the European. It's right over Georgia. So this is a huge factor as to why the European and the GFS are so wildly different with precipitation amounts along the New Jersey East PA area. It's because of this. This ridge in turn results in this shortwave digging more, and that in turn results in this cutting off. In addition, the features over Southeast Canada are important for determining how much these heights rise along the east coast here. If these heights can rise large enough, then this 500 low has a better chance at coming further north as opposed to being further south. Now, if we look at the Canadian was a bit of an outlier with today's model runs. If I can find the 500 for the Canadian here. Here's the Canadian precip. I was looking for 500 though, but here's the precip. This was an outlier. This shows a lot of precipitation for State College. None of the other models really agree with this though. So this is definitely a bit of an extreme solution here. But it kind of goes to show you, the Canadian as a whole at 500, here we go, here's 500, isn't really too different from the GFS or the European. You can see very similar evolution overall. Notice where this 500 low is. The European has it over Georgia. This has it over Virginia. This is a huge difference of 200 or so miles. That is huge and needs to be taken into consideration when dealing with the track of the storm. So now, depending on the strength of this shortwave, and depending on the strength of this shortwave, and depending on the intensity of this ridge, will determine how far south this shortwave can get, and as a result, how much these heights ahead of this shortwave will rise. And those rising heights will allow for more of a northern track and more of a northern 500 millibar low. Compared to a weaker ridge and a less of a digging shortwave here. These are just some of my thoughts. If anyone has anything to add, please do. The general trend for today that I have noticed, though, is that this ridge in the west has become more amplified. And what that has done is this has forced this system further south. And as a result of this system going further south, it closes off. And as a result of it closing off further south, the precipitation cannot get as far north as, say, it was yesterday at this time. Will that trend continue? I can't really say for sure. I will say this, though. For when we look at past historical events, it is extremely unusual that Virginia would get a 2 to 3 feet without much blocking. We do have a block. It's just not, because as some of you may recall, in February 2010, we saw a very, very large blocking high, and that in turn resulted in precipitation remaining a little bit further south, hit a brick wall by the time it got to New York City. So we don't have that block this time around, and that makes me a little bit suspicious of the further south solutions. I mean, it makes sense meteorologically, to me at least. But in terms of the overall evolution of it, the overall results, I should say, it's extremely unusual for Virginia to see 2 to 3 feet of snow without much of a block. Also, in past events, this is just kind of coming from more of an anecdotal, experience. I've noticed that with moisture-laden systems, they tend to get underestimated in the north kind of cutoff. So that's definitely another thing to take a look at. I think that the Europeans saw something that is legitimate, but my primary thought is that it probably overcorrected, and as a result, you'll see it, I think, start going back a little bit, but it won't be where it was yesterday at this time. Anyone else have anything else to add? Yes, Sean.
I feel like the confluence zone is probably going to be a key in terms of where, I don't know if you said this before I showed up, but I feel like that confluence zone is going to be a key in terms of where the northern extent of precip sets up.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And what's really fascinating is that between runs, we really saw a huge change with the way that everything was handled here in Southeast Canada. With the 18Z run, we actually saw more of a piece kind of revolving around there's an upper level low in Canada. We saw a piece of energy rotating around that low, and as a result of that, that actually resulted in suppressed heights along the East Coast, and that in turn resulted in a further south solution than 12Z.
We just ask if you have questions, either get the mic or make sure you talk loud enough that the cameras can hear. You're fine. We could hear you. I just wanted to.
I'm loud enough.
Anyone else have anything to add? Any other comments?
Well, I'll make a comment if no one else is going to talk. A lot of, if you ever look at analogs, one of the websites or sources people go to is the SIPS analogs, and I don't remember what the acronym is, sorry. Last night, the blizzard of '96 was the primary analog, but I really think that the pattern, especially over the western U.S., is very different than it was in the blizzard of '96. Even if you just look at the 500 millibar map, there's another vortex coming in that I think is speeding up, and you kind of mentioned this, the flow is faster. So even though that may give you some hope that for the reason that the blizzard of '96 is showing up as an analog, this could come north. It could very well could, but I don't think the blizzard of '96 is a good analog for the reason that while yes, over the eastern U.S. everything looks very similar, it looks very similar because this is a huge storm and that was a huge storm. Over the western part of the country, I think the pattern is very different, and I think that is playing a role in what's driving the energy so far south in the European.
That's a good point, and actually to go off that point, the top 5 analogs based off of the GFS actually had 3 of them had more than 12 inches of snow here, 2 of them had less than 5 inches of snow. So that goes to show you that we are dealing with a very kind of, I guess you could say, volatile setup. And so I just want to hear you guys' thoughts. What do you think is more likely? Do you think that this will, go back further northwest? Do you think that this will keep trending southeast? Where do you think the heaviest axis of snow will be? Is there going to be a rain and snow line? If so, where? what is the timing of this going to be like? Timing is still definitely a issue we shouldn't really be focusing on. But these are some of the things I think we should definitely be taking a look at. Alex?
I think there's definitely potential for this to come back north. I remember watching a video that Bernie Reno posted on AccuWeather both yesterday and today. He talks about the general rule of thumb where a piece of energy comes in along the west coast, it'll have the tendency to leave about the same latitude on the east. And obviously that's not going to be the case if we're following the models verbatim right now. But I think what it says is at least this storm system has the potential to come northwest. I've seen it so many times just watching storms over in Cleveland and everything that'll start inching one way or the other within 48 hours of the storm. So I don't think it's reasonable to discard this the possibility of it coming north. But again, as we get closer and closer, things are going to be really being put into place as we get closer.
Hey, I agree with that. To kind of go off that point, there was I don't know if you guys are following this, but this time, several days ago, I'd say, there was a system along the East Coast, 60 hours out, that was modeled to be about 1,000 miles offshore. That came back and came back west enough to give southeast New Jersey 2 to 3 inches of snow. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I'm saying that there is still enough volatility to where extreme variations could still happen. And right now, I would say that the most likely scenario, I guess you could say, is that the best axis of snow will probably be around I-95 points southeast. That's what it looks like right now. Yesterday, we were dealing with potential mixing concerns with I-95. Now, since everything has shifted southeast, it doesn't really look like that will be the case. Now, the question is, does that keep going southeast, or does that keep going northwest? It's such a tricky setup, and I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page with this. That, just because the models might be trending southeast now does not mean that they won't change later or continue to trend southeast, down the road. Do any of you think that rain or snow line will be an issue anywhere?
Not in Pennsylvania.
Not in Pennsylvania. Yesterday, southeast PA was kind of, I'd say, a little borderline, but now I don't think that's really much of an issue at all. Anyone else? Yes.
I feel like if it is an issue, it kind of would be along the coast, since the Atlantic Ocean temperatures are very warm this time of year. So
right.
The easterly flow brings that air onshore. It could be an issue.
Yeah, I think that the water temperatures are actually, as you said, several degrees above normal. So, any sort of, seemingly innocuous wind change along the coast could really, bring precipitation type issues. I don't think that will really be an issue for eastern Pennsylvania. It'll probably be an issue for the Jersey Shore. Also, what do you guys think about winds? What are winds going to be like? I saw a couple runs of the GFS yesterday had really bad wind potential for the coast. I imagine that since it's shifted southeast, it's less than it was yesterday. But some of the runs I saw yesterday had, I think, 60 to 70 gusts over, coastal, up to 40 to 50 gusts eastern PA. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of the models probably would have trended less bullish with that as a result of, everything shifting southeast. Yes.
I saw some 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts today on the GFS, and I know even regardless if this thing gets downgraded, and I don't think it will. I think intensity-wise, I think the miles that are really where it's at. And I think 30 to 40 miles an hour would be awful. I'm from the Jersey Shore. If you talk about beach erosion, it's going to be terrible all across New Jersey.
I also think that there's correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but I believe that there should be a full moon around that time as well.
Yeah, it'll be high tide.
So that could be a potential issue there as well. So the winds, I definitely feel that winds are definitely an issue that's being overlooked by. It's definitely an issue I think that's being overlooked in general. I'd say you just hear snow amounts, but not really much of the wind. And the wind I think is definitely an important factor to take a look at. Yes, Ryan.
I would say I'm from the Boston area, and although the trend today has certainly been much like in State College for less snow in the Boston area, I did notice, and this is obviously separate from where the heaviest snow would be, a couple of the meteorologists up there, at least in broadcast, are starting to turn their attention to the coast and to the wind, because even in southern New England, you have the pressure gradient. If there's a high over southern Canada or northern Maine, and it's a persistent east to northeast flow, similar to the Jersey Shore, that would cause issues along with the astronomical high tide. So I will say, even though they're being taken out of the heavy snow risk up there, almost certainly, people are starting to talk about the coast and the wind.
Yeah, that's good that they're mentioning the wind because, you know, I feel that with this particular situation, the wind could, you know, for some locations be just as important as, you know, whatever, how much snow would fall. Anyone else have anything to add about the wind? Yes.
I think just to go along with the wind factor, in places like the Jersey Shore and Delaware, since the temperatures should be close to freezing and it might be a heavy wet snow,
Right.
I think power outages aren't out of the question.
That's a really great point. I haven't even thought of that yet. Yeah, definitely. Some of the surface temperatures I've looked at are right around freezing for the coast, and you know, the heavy wet snow, especially, you know, that could definitely create power outages. You know, especially the wind as well. So you have the wind on top of the, you know, heavy wet snow that's falling. You know, I definitely would say the highest probability of seeing power outages right now would definitely be Eastern PA because, you know, they're the closest to the coast. And they're going to be dealing with the strongest winds, not only the strongest winds, but also the strongest precipitation rates as well. So yeah, the wind is definitely something to consider in addition to the heavy snow. Anyone have anything else to add? Yes.
Just in regards to where the models are trending, I think it is kind of hard to ignore the trend today.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And especially since the euro is kind of leading that trend, and that's kind of the euro has been so consistent over the past few years.
It's interesting because actually yesterday or this morning at 0Z, the first model that showed this kind of situation where it cuts off in the south was actually a model that doesn't really get used very often, the Navy model, the NOGAPS, or the NavGem, I think it's called now. So it was onto something. It's still out to sea now. It's been out to sea for five runs straight now. So, but definitely, I think that if we're going to see any major changes, it's definitely going to be tonight when the energy gets fully sampled. And I think we'll definitely have a much, much better idea 2 days from now at this time. Anyone else have any other comments? No other comments? Alex?
I just had a question about how does the blocking high pressure with this storm differ than maybe other big winter storms in the past?
So with the reason why, okay, so with 2000, I mentioned February 2010, that had a really large blocking high right by Greenland. And that, as a result, was suppressing everything further south. What is making me kind of a little bit skeptical of the South solutions is that the block that we have now is nowhere near the magnitude of the block of 2010, February 2010. Now, that's not the only factor there. You know, it also depends on, you know, like the everything here, because, you know, you can see here, look at this shortwave right here, kind of depressing heights along the East Coast. You know, the exact evolution of this. You know, this is another point to mention is that this is also from a very poorly, sparsely sampled region as well. So, you know, this area is kind of a little bit uncertain, and that's unfortunate because what happens in this area, I think, is really going to, you know, have a huge say as to what the overall, you know, depiction will be like down the road. So, now in terms of, you know, discussions and stuff, I would definitely not put out amounts yet. I would wait until, I'd say, Thursday to start putting out amounts. I would use kind of vague terms right now, like light, moderate, heavy, significant. You know, here probably, you know, light to maybe moderate. You know, further east, maybe moderate to significant, stuff like that. I wouldn't really get too descriptive, but I would definitely mention, you know, the possibility of gusty winds as well in the forecast. And I would also definitely, you know, mention the discussion, you know, because a lot of this, you know, this especially is poorly sampled, and this will be better sampled, but right now it's still not really well sampled either. You know, there might be no change with tonight's runs. I'm not sure, but you know, I think that definitely if we're going to see any change, it will be tonight at 0Z's runs. Yes, Sean.
Do you think that Vienna Energy is fully unsure in terms of our sampling region? You guys think we'll get there in time for the ZOZ run? That's really the question.
That's a good point. Here it looks like it's like here's 0Z right here. This looks almost like very almost. If it's not by 0Z, definitely by 12Z tomorrow. Definitely by 12Z tomorrow. If no one has anything else to add, then I guess that we can conclude this discussion. I'm glad you guys all came out to pitch in your thoughts because, you know, I think it's really important that as an organization we're all on the same page with this, you know, because if there are forecasts that vary between, you know, shift and shift, that's a fairly big inconsistency. You know, that could just be due to like models, but I also think it's fairly important that, you know, we're all discussing and making sure that we all are on the same page with this.
I also don't think we've seen our last surprise.
I would 100% agree with that. I do not think this has stopped trending. Whether it goes northwest or southeast, I have no idea.
Yeah, one point I would make based on, just to keep the, maybe someone will get an idea from this comment or not. I noticed the spread, I was looking at a map of the spread of the European ensemble members. So even though several of them shifted southeast, and although this could be that there are still some stragglers to the northwest, the spread actually increased if you look at the standard deviation on today's 12Z ensemble runs versus last night's 0Z ensemble run. So I agree that we're probably not at the final answer on this, and maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And hopefully tonight, or certainly by tomorrow afternoon, we have a little bit of a better idea if this trend stops or this trend continues or we wobble back north a little bit. But I did think it was a little interesting that there was a greater spread as we get closer versus what we had yesterday or last night.
I didn't even know that the spread had increased that much. That's a really great point. I definitely think it has a lot to do with everything that's going on in Southeast Canada right now. The fact that it's a very sparsely sampled area, you know, the way that it's handling, you know, pieces that are breaking off from this upper level low over here is definitely leading to widely varying solutions between runs. Anyone else have anything to add? Any concluding remarks? Okay, well, in that case, thank you all for coming out, and hopefully we will have a better idea by this time tomorrow, if not, by this time Thursday.